Howdy, lieutenants and economists.
The most volatile, evil, disgusting things on the planet, humans. If you have a video request, you can always go to assholeconsulting.com. Yeah, I am gonna charge you, kids.
And that is the importance of not fucking up.
You are such an asshole!
Hey everybody, the old captain here. It's the 5th of July, after the 4th of July. 5th of July. Oh, we're an independent country, alright. And then everything went back to normal. So a video request, if you have a video request or any kind of regular request, go to assholeconsulting.com and we'll point you in the right direction, give you the advice we need, or you need, sorry, just woke up, and we'll charge you. And that's how we live here in Cappy Capland. Anyway, hi, I'm Aaron, been watching your videos for a while, agree with many of the things you say, though not everything, had some questions and wanted your opinions on the two items below. The merits of the privatization of education. Taking India as an example, I've heard your opinions on the public education system versus the private education system. While your views are not without merit, I would like to point out the disadvantages of private education. In India, there are public schools and private schools. Typically, the public schools are underfunded and understaffed, and thus the quality of education there is not so great. Only the folks who can't afford private school go there. On the other hand, the private schools offer good quality education for the most part, but may charge quite exorbitant fees. And a large number of them charge huge capacitation fees during the time. It sounds so fun. We're going to capitation, like decapitation per head. I know, capitation fees. It sounds very violent. Even for kindergarten class. There are many people who complain about this, but since there are no good alternatives, they are forced to pay high amounts for education. Some people accuse the schools of behaving like businesses. Well, they are businesses. They're private schools. Let's stop here and make a very important point. If there's no profit in it for the owners, no one's going to fund the capital to provide these schools. Like British Petroleum and Exxon don't make oil for shits and giggles. They don't make it because they're kind, nice, sweet people. And it's not because they're evil, greedy, bastard corporations either. It's to produce oil, somebody, Standard, J.P. Rockefeller, whoever it was, had to go back with his or her own money, which is their life, their time, and then invest it, risk it, to start pumping oil out of the ground and refine it into gasoline. You're damn right they're going to do it for a profit because you're a fool not to. I give up my time to work. People go to work every day for money. Why is it all of a sudden if you're a business or you're an independent contractor, you're evil? So keep in mind the only reason, what is is disagreeable, or the disagreements you might have with these private schools, they wouldn't exist if it weren't for profit. That's the whole point. You go to work right now for profit. It's not, you're not a business, you're an employee, but, expecting someone who takes their money, to an entrepreneur, to start a business and then not expect profit, that's like you going to work and not expecting payment. All right? That's how the whole world works. And I don't even care if it's a communist country. That's still how the whole world works. In certain schools, they even hire and keep only new teachers and get rid of older teachers in order to keep the money paid for teacher salaries down. It's immoral, but they have every right to do it. What's your take on this? I wonder whether a solution would be the fusion school, publicly funded, i.e. government aided, but still charge nominal fees to parents. What do you think of that idea? You're right here, and well, I'll just give you the whole thing. All right. There's nothing wrong with private schools, and private schools are superior because you just said so. You said that they're better schools than the public ones. And that people who can't afford to go to the private schools go to the inferior public ones. Now, this is normally the case. I almost want to say always because nothing is coming to my mind where you have the choice between a public good or a private good. 99.999% of 100, the private school or the private offering is going to be better. Now, that's one thing if we're talking Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and other things that people really don't need to live. Tiffany diamonds. You, me, every other guy who's got a brain in our heads we know we don't need Tiffany diamonds or an Omega watch or Breitling. What's the one? Oh, the big fancy one. Rolex. That's the one. We don't need that. Yeah, it's probably a superior watch, but we don't need it. We're okay with or a Walmart watch or whatever else have you. But having a watch or having a Ferrari does not determine your future earnings capacity in the future. Education does. And so your point is well taken, and I think I, along with many people on the right or the libertarian, would agree that there should be some kind of, as you call it, fusion school, but it wouldn't be a fusion school. The position I would take, and I think is representative of free market capitalists and libertarian type people, is the government should be out of education altogether, but the government should provide a stipend or some kind of funding to families, per kid, that would allow them to attend an average private school. And this is in the best interest of the children and would also solve the problem of educating all the kids, because, again, this is not like a Ferrari or an Omega watch. This is education, and every kid should be given a fair shot in life. Now, if they fuck it up or are losers or they get pregnant, fuck them. I don't care. They squandered it. But you don't want it like a genius is born into the ghetto, and because his parents fucked up and had more kids than they could afford, he or she can't make it into school, and therefore the future would-be cure of cancer never makes it into the medical field and ends up working in the barrio or what have you. So the government, in the ideal world of Aaron Clarey, the government would provide some standard stipend that would be used to go and get kids educated in private schools. Now, I know in India it's one thing, but this in the United States it's different, and it will further provide evidence towards the efficiency and superiority of a free market system. Here in the United States, it's cheaper to educate the kids per pupil spent. It depends on what school. I mean, you could certainly go to these top elite schools and you're blowing hundreds of thousands of dollars, but like if you go to a parochial school, a lot of these private schools educate the kids per pupil per year for a fraction of the cost of the public schools. And they provide better education. The kids come out higher scoring, better educated, et cetera, and for a fraction of the cost. So in the United States, of course, it's different here. We have a very incredibly corrupt public school system. We have our teachers, the amount of teachers per pupil has gone up fivefold while the children haven't and the education hasn't, or not teachers, but business administration, all this unnecessary administrative fat, which it doesn't seem to be the case over there in India. But the question is, how do we educate the kids with superior or the best education possible? What you would do is you would have the private sector provide the education, and private people pay for it, and then for those who are unfortunate or poor, the government would come in and step in and provide those kids a voucher. It's called a voucher system, is what they call it here. And then those kids, even though they're poor, could then afford to go and get a superior education, and at least here in the United States at a fraction of the cost, because free markets are just that much more efficient and less corrupt. So yes, you have that there. Then your second question, which is related and very interesting, privatization of an prison industrial complex. I've heard you talk about capitalism, how privatization is always good. Not always, but vast majority of the time. I personally think that certain things must not be privatized. Military, prisons, especially prison. Privatization of prisons just encourages the government to throw more people in jail/prison. According to one stat, USA has 25% of the total prison population of the world. I don't see how privatizing prisons encourages the government to throw more people in jail. Because there are private prisons and the government has to pay for them. Typically the government doesn't want to pay for them, so they probably want to keep people out. According to one stat, USA has 25% of the total prison population of the world, but only has 5% of the world population. That's pretty fucked up. And you think, yeah, I do. And the war on drugs isn't helping here. That's precisely why I think it's fucked up. You shouldn't have some guy in there who's carrying, X too many ounces of weed or pot or coke, who is just a dealer and not a violent criminal. I'm with you there. Surely you don't agree with the privatization of prisons. Wouldn't it be better to nationalize the prisons so this bullshit could be stopped? No, because you're confusing the judicial system with the prison system. The judicial system is still public, and judicial systems should be public, because you don't want a corporation in charge determining who's going to win and who's going to lose a court case and who's going to go to jail and who's not. That's why you guys you're descended from the British system or influenced by this, so you have courts in as well. Innocent until proven guilty. I'm not sure if that's the same thing over in India, but you have laws. They're supposed to be unbiased, and you have a court, and there's a judge, and the judge will hear you guys out, or you have a jury. They will hear, and there are laws that apply universally to everybody in India or this particular country in the United States or what have you. And so, in order to be fair and not be biased, yes, you have to have a public and publicly funded judicial system. Now, once Bob is convicted of murdering puppies, and the sentencing for murdering puppies is 4 years in jail, then it's like, okay, do we want a government entity to now prison and house Bob for those 4 years? Well, to me, the debate is whether it's privately owned or publicly owned is moot. That guy's just got to stay there for 4 years, not violating his human rights. Has to be fed, clothed, whatever else. And if we can find, again, it's like the schools, if we can find a private company to do it cheaper and as good, if not better, than the public sector, than the government, then let's do it. And it really does get to specialization. I mean, for example, roads. This is perfectly analogous to roads. The government pays for roads, but the government doesn't build the roads. Could you imagine Obama actually doing real work with a shovel and sweating? I mean, the guy wouldn't know what that wet stuff coming out of his brow was. What is this? Good Lord. Michelle, what's happening to me? Anyway, so the government may determine to allocate resources to something. The government may decide to build bridges and roads, but the companies, the private sector, is the one that actually builds the road. So if you're on the highway, it's Ashplund is a large company out here. Ashplund Asphalt. They do the asphalt pretty much on all the north Midwest of the United States. Well, that's a private company. I'm sure you go south, it's Bob's Asphalt or Bill's Construction or an Amy's road making service, whatever. And it's the same thing with prisons. Once the government, the public sector service of judging, of judicial and sentencing has been done, you don't want the government now getting into the business of running prisons. The government will pay for it, of course, and bid it out, and you have an issue of the government going so cheap to the lowest bidder that you have very poor security controls. But usually you'll get a better service than if the government were to set up an agency and try and run an actual prison system. So you do want it privatized unless there's what's called market failure, where the market is so inept and so corrupt. For example, in banking, that's a perfect example, where the government's got to come in and say, you idiots have no fucking clue what you're doing. You're so bad. Now we have to have government bureaucrats come in and tell you how to do it. And that did kind of happen after the Great Recession or the financial crisis here in the United States. But the prisons, that hasn't happened so far. So if you have a problem with the percentage of people being convicted or thrown in jail, that's not who's running the prisons. The prisons is merely a housing entity, just like the schools are merely an educational entity. Who goes in there is the judicial system. So that's what you have to do there. But in general, usually, I mean, and here you pick out two examples of where there is either government involvement or there is a public good involved, like education, getting kids involved. The question is, who do you want to deliver it? And not even 9 times out of 10, 99.9 times out of 100,000 or whatever the math was, you want the public, or you want the private sector to do it. Maybe the government at best, can maybe give money to kids who are disadvantaged, give money to entities that could, but you want it all in the private sector. Like I don't know what you did, but you were let's say you're a computer programmer. I'm an economist. Do you want to change your own oil? If you think of everything that goes into maintaining your house, do you want to become a master at all that, siding, plumbing, and all that? No, that's why we have the division of labor. So the government does government things, and it tries to do it as best it can, I guess, but you want everything else, just like you do in your world. You want to specialize in one thing, you want everything else outsourced. So anyway, hope that explained things, kind of like, why Republicans and conservatives are free marketers across the world, not just evil people who are like, no, fuck the kids, fuck the prison population. But we'll get to another request later. Toodles.